Markets Now is brought to you by the 5-year anniversary of Brevant Seeds. Here's to 5 years of not just winning, but collecting one game-changing W after another. See all of our wins at brevant.com/wins.
And welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Roque with Matt Bennett of agmarket.net. And we're just moments or minutes after the USDA, WSDA, and crop production reports out. And Matt, let's talk about corn yield. Disappointing, down only 0.7 bushels per acre. Certainly the bulls were looking for a lot more, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, you come in here at a 186 yield and, trade guess was 184. Our group was below the average trade guess based on all the producers we talked to. Yeah, there's some awfully good corn out there this year. Corn that performed better than what you would expect with the kind of weather that we had, but there was also some train wrecks and a lot of growers that indicated to us their crop was good. It just wasn't quite as good as a year ago. So we were shocked to see a 186 yield.
Absolutely. And do you think we go down now into the January report? If we get the big cuts that the market is expecting, is that when it'll come?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, the way that the market's going to trade sideways to lower would make sense. Essentially with a 2.1 plus carry, there's no doubt that you've got ample corn sitting around. Now, the one thing I'd point out, Michelle, is that, with this massive U.S. crop, a huge safrinha crop last year, versus a year ago, we're looking at world stocks down about 10 million tons. So world corn usage is a record. That's all there is to it. U.S. corn demand is at a record. And so what could go wrong there? Ultimately, we've got enough corn around. I've got some question marks with the balance sheet. Don't get me wrong. I think feed and residual usage is still too high. But ultimately, this necessitates that we have big crops out of both the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere. And if we don't, we're going to eat into world carryout big time.
All right. So you mentioned feed and residual, which you've had a lot of question marks about. Exports actually were raised on corn by 100 million bushels, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Exports go up to 3.1 billion. I mean, that's a big number. No doubt about it. We've seen really good exports here in the first part of the marketing year. We've been outpacing what we need to reach the USDA goal, and the USDA tipped the cap to that. It was interesting to see them this early in the marketing year go ahead and make that adjustment if they're not going to do anything on feed and residual uses. I'm not arguing it because certainly I think you could make the case that the number could have looked a lot worse from a carryout standpoint today if they were going to keep that yield as strong as what they did. But yeah, bottom line is these exports are impressive to say the least.
Yeah, and USDA acknowledged that it was based on the sales to date. So they're using actual data. So you mentioned it, almost a 2.2 billion bushel carryout. Where should we be for corn prices with that in mind?
I mean, it's tough, Michelle. You'd stand to reason that we should move lower with 2.1 billion bushels, but it's problematic for the grower whenever we start looking at, for instance, 2026. We know 25 is not going to be a home run for folks. We've had a little bit of an uptick here lately, but it's still tough to make a lot of money at the prices we're looking at. You look at input costs for 26 corn. I mean, you're looking at what, a little under 470 again. Boy, I don't know that you're going to be able to encourage an acreage increase by any means. And again, with 98 million planted this year, you actually took world stocks lower. So, I would say price trajectory is you have a tough way of convincing me that we should move higher from here. But really, in all reality, we need to move higher from here.
True. So soybeans yield down a half a bushel per acre at 53. That's exactly what the trade was expecting, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone thought this bean yield would move a little bit lower. We thought the same thing. We were actually down like a 53.3, so we were a little bit above where the USDA came in. I think all of us felt like, hey, these beans actually performed well through a really tough environment as far as weather was concerned. Some of these early planted beans were phenomenal, quite frankly, and you get out into May planted beans, it's a little different story for sure. A lot of extremely dry beans. And I've got to think this moisture content being so low in the Eastern Corn Belt, similar to what we saw in the Western Corn Belt a year ago, probably factored into having to dial that yield back just a little bit.
So the big question mark that we had going into the report was, what were we going to see for demand, especially with China and the US signing this trade accord, or not signing it, but at least agreeing to it. And talk about what USDA did with exports. They actually lowered exports, didn't they?
They did. And, I've been asked about this quite a bit recently. Do I think that USDA will raise exports based on the Chinese deal? And the way that I've answered it is that I felt like in the September WASDE, they actually had plenty of Chinese demand built in. And so, a lot of us were wondering, hey, how much are the Chinese going to buy off of us? And bottom line is, we came in today, they lowered exports. Why? Because I think they're concerned that you're going to see, Chinese business might show up. But other than China, we're going to have a hard time competing. And as of right now, we're certainly a little more expensive on the world market than what Brazil or Argentinians are. So USDA dropped it back. I wasn't surprised by that one.
Yeah, for sure. And USDA actually acknowledged in the forward that, hey, we realize we have a China deal, but we're not going to be as competitive. And so we're going to start shifting the deck chairs around. We're going to have less of these other countries coming to the US for business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've had a lot of, with China being absent in the first part of the marketing year, we're competitive, quite frankly. These other countries came to us. They bought beans off of the US. But as of right now, I think what USDA is saying is it's problematic to assume that we're going to see that business continue, given the fact that our values on US beans are just a little rich for other folks to step in and buy them. And that's basically the assumption they're making is that, we may see a little uptick on China, but we're certainly not going to with the rest of the world.
So let's talk about China. We did get daily flash reports all put out as one big wad trying to catch up with the backlog from government being shut. China, 12.2 million bushels, even unknown, only 22.6 million bushels. That's got to be a disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big disappointment. China didn't buy a whole lot of beans during the period. A lot of us felt like, hey, what a better time for them to buy beans than when they can fly under the radar. They still weren't buying beans, though. And so, what have they done if they've made this agreement? They stepped in and bought beans on the board. And then whenever they actually do buy the physical, lift the hedge, that's a possibility that a lot of us have been wondering whether or not that's going to occur. But yeah, as far as these daily announcements go, that was a big disappointment, seeing that China really hadn't done much of anything.
Yeah, and as a result, as you and I speak, the soybean market, which made new highs for the move, some 17-month highs, is down right now, isn't it?
Oh yeah, the report on beans wouldn't necessarily be labeled as bearish. It's certainly the corn report, in my opinion, you would say is fairly bearish. But beans is probably a little more neutral, and so seeing them come out of the gate like they did, I think it tells you people were expecting a little more friendly report as far as beans were concerned. And so expectations have everything to do with the way this market trades after reports hit, and that's what we're seeing today.
Yeah. To your point, 290 million bushel ending stocks, that's not exactly bearish, is it?
No, it's not. And I mean, world stocks at 122, that's not really a bearish number either. I'd say it's ample. It's not burdensome by any means, especially with a massive Brazilian crop this last year. And so again, I think that what we all have to understand is that demand, for oil seeds, for feed grains is very strong throughout the world, very strong here in the US. And if you have world weather issues, being that we continue to whittle ourselves down to kind of a just-in-time delivery world, you could have some serious volatility if you step in with a weather issue. I know southern Brazil and Argentina have trended on the drier side. There's question marks what might happen there if they would go dry and stay dry. That's certainly something the market's going to pay attention to.
All right, so where do prices need to be now? We just mentioned that we went up, hit 17-month highs. We had over $1 rally. So now where do we go?
That's the big question mark. I mean, a couple of things come to mind. What happens as far as Brazil weather goes? It looks okay for the time being, to where they should still have a very large crop. If that would change, if that sentiment changes to more of a concerning one, I think that you could see beans move higher. The other thing, of course, is what's China going to do as far as U.S. purchases? If we do see some serious activity start in there, I don't think that that's going to be bearish the market necessarily. And so, where do we need to go from here? And what do we need to do, I think, is probably the more important question. In all honesty, you take the beans to 17-month highs, as you suggested, and you take cash prices well over $1 off of the harvest lows. I don't know how you ignore that. An incremental sale in here makes a heck of a lot of sense to me. Does that mean I'm bearish? Not necessarily. Just means I'm smart and willing to take prices, at a lot higher level than what they were before. But could I make the case for $12 beans? I mean, a lot of times when you go above 11, most of the time you trade up to 12, 12.50, and even above times. I still think you could see $12 beans if everything doesn't go right with world weather.
Yeah, technically we don't stay in the 11s very long. That's for sure.
Absolutely not.
Just a little quick love for the wheat market. Well, the report didn't give it any love. Global stocks up almost 7.5 million metric tons. And so the wheat market, just like I said, we didn't have anything that was bullish in that report for that market either.
Yeah, the wheat market can't catch a break. That's pretty much all there is to it. I mean, every time we feel like last week, we felt like, hey, we may have a little bit of an uptrend going here for wheat. Maybe wheat's going to come along for the ride. Maybe China's going to step in and buy wheat, and then there's a lot of question marks and red flags that pop up with China buying beans off Brazil instead. Are they going to buy a bunch of wheat? Well, I don't know. The problem is, Michelle, with more global stocks, it's going to be really hard to see this wheat market catch a bid. And I think you're looking at continued doldrums for wheat. It's just, it's been a tough market to trade for a long time. Can't get much enthusiasm going. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
One last question for you. You and I talked last week about the credibility of the report that with USDA closed because of the government shutdown, there was a lot of questions about would USDA have enough information to do a accurate report, and would there be enough respondents? And it looks like 6,692, that's a pretty good return rate. So your thoughts about the accuracy of this report?
Yeah, I mean, I think the USDA is doing their best by all means. It seems like, of course, they were probably a bit rushed as in getting back to work and, hey, get this report put together. But it sure looks like they did a good job gathering data. Regardless, most reports anymore, I feel like a lot of people question, hey, is this too high? Is this too low? I felt like if it was a bullish report, the bears would say these numbers aren't accurate. If it was bearish, vice versa. And I don't really think that my opinion on that's changed any. And I'm not questioning. I don't want their job by any means. Do I feel like the corn yield's still a little too high? Yeah, I do. But at the same time, they've got a lot more data at their fingertips than what I do.
All right. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm Matt Bennett with agmarket.net. That is Markets Now.
When you choose Brevant Seeds, you don't just win. You win so big, the very ground beneath your feet cries tears of joy. You win so big that second place feels like a participation trophy. You win so big, you might as well be harvesting buried treasure. Oh, sorry, just one more. When you choose Brevant Seeds, you don't just win. You hit the damn jackpot. Don't just win. Talk with your retailer or visit Brevant.com/jackpot to get started.